Okay, from the front, you will be familiar with the front, and there are 2 to 3 questions in your exam from there. So what is front? When two air mass come together, but they do not readily mix each other, but at the boundary between two air mass, they make a boundary slope, and that boundary slope is front. So sloping surface create warmer, lighter air mass lifted or pushed above the cold air and denser air mass. So this rising of the air is called frontal uplift. So we have four types of front. One is stationary front, warm front, cold front, and the finally occluded front. So you have at least three questions in your exam about front. So you need to know first what is stationary front means. So when two air mass is moving in the opposite direction, when they meet, they cannot move in any appreciable direction. So they are stuck, and warm and cold air mass, when they mix together in the boundary layer, they actually create some cloud. Sometimes in the stationary front we get light precipitation during the winter we get light snowfall, and during the hot summer day we get overcast sometime. So frontal boundary, the main thing is fail to move in an appreciable direction, and then when occurred, these both air mass have a small gradient and the temperature and the pressure. Because this stationary front, we will not see any hazardous situation or thunderstorm or something like that, but sometime we can see the lightning. So you need to know what is stationary front means. Cold front is the most common and most dangerous front. We are very much concerned about that. So how that cold front happen? If you see the cold air mass, when cold air mass move into the warmer air mass, and cold air push warm air up. So basically the warm air has a lot of moisture content. So when it goes up, that's makes cumulus cloud, and create a lot of precipitation, and also the boundary layer is very steep, and the sharp change of temperature, sharp change of pressure, you can realize due to the sharp change of pressure temperature, there is a low pressure system created there, and that low pressure system cause the very heavy precipitation. We get most of the violent thunderstorm, violent storm from the cold front. So you need to know the basic things about the cold front. There is a question for that. Warm front is not as violent as cold front, but warm air mass is invading into region that we have cold air. So when warm air actually aggressor or moving into the cold air, that warm air is lighter, so it slides away over the cold air, and you have a very gentle slope. And when you have warm front, you do not have much violent weather. You do not have that much precipitation. Sometimes excuse me, sometimes you don't see that. So the frontal slope in the warm front is gentle. So you need to know that. And so you are familiar with formation of hurricane. So hurricane is a vigorous storm. It's synoptic scale storm. But when you see the formation of the hurricane, structure of the hurricane has eye wall and a spiral band. So if you are looking at over here, exactly over here, the wind is very calm. In here, exactly over here is the high pressure system. but eye wall is a very intense low pressure system. So wind speed is very much higher over the eye wall. So this is the most destructive area when it is passing over the land and we are facing over this area. You are very in bad luck. So eye wall is a very destructive, and you have also a spiral band. So a spiral band has the hot tower and some other things very difficult. We are not going to explain that in review class, but make sure that eye of the hurricane is very uh, clear sky. There is no precipitation or a thunderstorm over here, but eye wall you have a lot of precipitation, thunderstorm, lightning maybe, and very violent weather. So you need to know that. And let's see the hurricane situation. So prominent low pressure center with a strong cyclonic wind in a spiral windward, that's the hurricane. And hurricane, to make the hurricane you need to require wind speed 74 mile per hour. So category 1 if you would like to consider that. So you see that is smaller than the extratropical cyclone with the diameter 100 to 600 mile, and eye of the hurricane depends on the size of the hurricane, but most of the time the eye become 10 to 15 miles in diameter. And you know that eye wall is very destructive, and energy, that's the main thing you need to know about the hurricane. The energy actually coming from the latent heat evaporated from the tropical ocean surface. So ocean hot water is the fuel for the hurricane. That's why when hurricane hit inland it became weaker, and that's the benefit that hurricane die out when it's forward to the inland. Now what is the precondition for the hurricane? Hurricane cannot form over the equator. So if you are looking at 5 degrees south to 5 degree north from the equator, I would say 5 to 8 from north and south, there is no hurricane, because you know the Coriolis effect does not affect on that region. You are familiar with that. The Coriolis effect is the apparent deflection of the moving object due to the rotation that happens. So our Earth is moving from west to east direction, and this Coriolis effect veering to the right in the northern hemisphere and veering to the left in the southern hemisphere, and these two situation is making the hurricane. But hurricane has the fundamental of foundation, or equal prerequisite for forming hurricane. First of all, I would say the region has to be over 0 to 8 degree north and 0 to 8 degrees south over that, and warm ocean water, deep warm ocean water, or you can say deep pool of warm ocean water, we need that. And those all things are prerequisite for forming a hurricane. So if the question comes up something like that, what is the peak season for a hurricane in the North Atlantic Ocean or US Eastern Gulf Coast? So you have to know that the timing, and also different region the hurricane called in different name. In Indian Ocean we call it cyclone, in Japan we call it typhoon, and in the Atlantic when the hurricane formed we call it hurricane. So make sure that you know all these different names for answering those questions. I believe that you are familiar with the tornado. So in Oklahoma we have a lot of tornado, but the tornado scale telling you a different way. You see that enhance Fujita scale. This scale represent at the same time the damage and the wind speed. So it is a modified scale. So make sure that the tornado scale is Fujita enhanced Fujita scale, and the hurricane we call it category 1, category 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the highest. You have Fujita enhanced Fujita EF5 is the highest category. So you have the wind speed over 200 mile per hour. That's damage would be increasing. Everything will be wiped out in this path. So make sure you know this scale up to. I'm pretty sure that you have done some lab work in climate classification, or you are doing something right now maybe. Okay, so first letter of the climate classification is telling you the climate basic types. So A, moist tropical climate, B, dry climate, C, temperate, D, continental mesothermal, E, polar climate. So you are familiar with that. So first letter of the climate classification is telling you the basic climate type. The second letter is telling you the rainfall. So F, M, S, or W. So the second letter is telling you the rainfall amount. The third letter is telling you the temperature. So you have to make sure that in the climate classification you have either 2-letter code or 3-letter code. So first letter, capital letter, is telling you the climate type. Second letter is telling you the rainfall. Based on the rainfall you are identifying that, and third letter is telling you the temperature situation. So make sure that you know that there are questions on that. So if you see that early climate history, that Aristotle make that our climate classification. So actually based on the latitudinal position, so he classified 3 regions if you look at. So from the equator to Tropic of Cancer, around Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, that's torrid region, that's been warm region, and from there to here temperate, and in the polar higher latitude they called it frigid. So he divided this classification into 3 sector. So make sure that all 3 sector, there is a question on that. So what is the question, I'm not telling you, but there is a question on that. So make sure that you know that. And then climate classification. So A, you are familiar with A, is telling the first letter, that's a climate type. So A is humid tropical. A has tropical rainforest, tropical monsoon, tropical savanna. When you are watching the B climate, that's mean B climate would be dry climate, desert, arid climate. Dry climate has 2 types, steppe, desert. C, mesothermal, you have Mediterranean, humid subtropical, and so on. D is humid mesothermal, sorry, humid microthermal. And you have E climate, polar and ice sheet, all this. So you need a little bit more discussion about those things. A climate, if you are telling that what is the A climate means, you have to have a basic idea to answer 1 or 2 or 3 questions in the exam. So make sure that you know all this.